Hey everyone, how's it going? You can blame my Twitch chat for goading me into doing this. I just wanted to catch some Pokemon, but they convinced me in this playthrough to try and beat the game with just first form bug Pokemon. But that's not enough. I have to try not to overlevel and not use items in battle. So you might think, well, this is completely impossible, but you may never have played Sword and Shield. In some ways, Sword and Shield might be the easiest Pokemon games ever made, and there are lots of reasons for this that we're going to talk about, because truth is, I don't know if there's a single other game in the series where I could conceivably win with first form, properly leveled bug Pokemon, meaning we're not going to level 100 or anything. And you know what? With that said, let's talk about how I started this challenge. Now, the first thing I have to do after we do some boring tutorial stuff is get my first bug Pokemon. And that Pokemon is going to be Grubbin. Grubbin was introduced in Generation 7, and I really like its fully evolved form, Vikavolt, an electric bug. Grubbin itself is just pure bug. And honestly, for a first form bug, its stats aren't super bad. I don't know if we're going to be using it the whole way, but it's a decent starter bug. But it's actually not the bug I'm going to be using in the very early game. That's going to be the second bug I catch, Blipbug. Now, Blipbug was introduced in Generation 8 and ends up becoming a bug psychic type, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to evolve it. And also, unfortunately, Blipbug learns exactly one move, Struggle Bug. But in the early game, that's actually a really useful move. So to get by the early trainers, I'm not going to use Grubbin with Tackle, but rather Blipbug with Struggle Bug. And even though it's not super strong and Struggle Bug's not great, it actually worked out pretty well for me. The fact I think the AI is programmed to prefer not KOing my Pokemon, though, also probably helped me. But since it's possible that many of you may be new to Sword and Shield, let me give you a brief overview of how this game works. I mean, unlike Scarlet and Violet, this functions very much like a traditional Pokemon game. There's only one real twist. I mean, so far the start has been very standard. You go from a town to Route 1 to another town to Route 2 to a Pokemon lab, but this is where the game gets different. Once you're done with the immediate tutorial stuff, you get dumped in the wild area, which is very much a precursor to what we get in Scarlet and Violet, and is not as good at all. But it is a not really, but seemingly open world area, except it's really not one area, it's a bunch of routes that are interconnected. The wild area is weird, and I'm gonna have another video where I go much more in depth to the mechanics of the wild area. All we really need to do is go to those stairs in the background. That's the next city. So in that sense, it's no different than just a route with camera control. But because there are a bunch of interconnected routes, there's a lot of bug Pokemon we can theoretically catch. Unfortunately, because you can access so many different routes, they artificially make it difficult for you to catch the Pokemon by making the catch rates of Pokemon that are lower level than yours really, really bad. So Blipbug actually ends up being super great, KOing a bunch of Metapod, until we finally get enough levels to catch what may be one of our best Pokemon on this first form bug team, Joltik, introduced in Gen 5. Unlike Grubbin, it actually does start out as an electric type, and with a 319 base stat total, that's actually not very bad for a first form bug Pokemon in terms of total base stats, and its base 65 speed, not bad. This could be a fairly decent Pokemon for us. That's all the Pokemon I'm gonna catch for now, but we're gonna level up a little bit. And another reason Sword and Shield is much easier for first form bug Pokemon is this guy, the Watt Traders. I'm not gonna get into the Watt system, but what you need to know is that they sell, well, TMs exist in this game, but they're infinite. They have single-use TMs they call TRs. And these TRs are extremely overpowerful. You're not supposed to have as many watts as I do, and that's due to an exploit, again, I'm going to talk about in a later video because it's not entirely relevant. What's important is we get a base 80 power physical move that restores HP in Leech Life. Yeah, they really buffed Leech Life. Leech Life's now one of the best bug attacks. And that's good because the first gym leader actually happens to be a grass type gym leader, but his place, they don't really have city or town in this game, but we're going to be leaving the wild area for now. In theory, we only have to come back one more time. In practice, we're going to come back a bunch for reasons we'll get into later, but we're going to start traversing down traditional routes. Now, it may look like I'm lying because it seems like I'm back in the wild area, but the truth is I was on a traditional route. I forgot something. Our next Pokemon, Vulpix. which we're obviously not able to use in battle because it's a fire type, not a bug type. But in Generation 8, Vulpix has a very interesting property, which is going to allow us to easily catch our next bug type, Sizzlipede, a brand new Gen 8 fire bug type that only appears on Route 3 at 1%. However, if you have a Pokemon with Flash Fire, like Vulpix, leading your party, then Sizzlipede's chance of appearing goes from 1% to 51%. And Sizzlipede is going to be a very important Pokemon for us. Its stats may look underwhelming, but it is a fire-type bug Pokemon, which is really cool. More importantly, like Vulpix, it can have the Flash Fire ability. This ability, when Sizzlipede is hit by a fire-type move, it will power up Sizzlipede's fire-type moves, but more importantly, it makes Sizzlipede immune to fire-type moves. Considering how dangerous fire types are to bug Pokemon, and the third gym leader happens to be a fire type gym leader, this is really good. There are a couple more routes to go before we get to Hilbury, the first gym place. And the final Pokemon we're going to be getting on our team is another Gen 7 Pokemon, Cutiefly. Its base stats are also within the 300 range, but it is very fast for a first form bug Pokemon, and it has the fairy typing, which could prove useful. But alright, let's get to the first gym, Grass Gym Leader Milo. Obviously, I have a massive type advantage here, and Milo only has 2 Pokemon. Gossifleur, introduced in this generation, and what's that tutorial, Dynamax? Let's talk about Dynamax, and the biggest reason I believe that this is going to be possible, specifically in Sword and Shield. So Dynamax is a mechanic where for 3 turns, your Pokemon becomes a, well, you can see, giant version of itself. You can only do this in gym battles. Your Pokemon will get an HP boost and its attacks change into so-called max attacks. So the max attack is dependent on the type and base power. Leech Life being a base 80 power bug move becomes max Flutterby, base 130. More than enough to knock out the Gossifleur. Next comes out its evolved form, Eldegoss, and the gym leader will always Dynamax their final Pokemon on the first turn. So you'll see this Eldegoss now gets a massive HP boost. So is Max Flutterby enough to knock it out? No, but you'll notice that Max Flutterby lowers special attacks, while Max Strike, a normal type max move, it lowers speed. You can also check the base power of your moves by pressing Y, because I have 2 bug moves on Joltik. I want to make sure I was using the right one. I was. Eldegoss just has a lot of HP. And so, in order to preserve my Joltik, something you should know is that experience share is always on. So, you don't want your Pokemon fainting. People complain about this making the game easy, but it just cuts down on grinding. I send out Blipbug, and this is likely the last time we're gonna see it. We then see Max Overgrow, the Grass-type Max move, and you can see that adds grassy terrain to the battlefield. It's probably too little too late as we have stalled for 3 turns, so Eldegoss will undynamax, and it goes for round. After those Max Flutterbys, it doesn't have a lot of special attack. Unfortunately, Sizzlipede doesn't really have a great fire move. It's stuck with Ember, and it takes 2 hits to knock out the Eldegoss. Nonetheless, that is a first try victory for my pre-evolved bugs. Fairly under-leveled pre-evolved bugs, so good sign so far. Alright, we're on the way to the water gym, and there is Nincada here. I don't really plan on using Nincada because, well, look at its stats. It's pretty terrible. It does have the ground typing, which would help against rock, which is another weakness of bug, but with its terrible stats, I just can't see myself using it, but who knows? A Pokemon I definitely do plan on using is Dewpider. Dewpider is a water bug Pokemon that was introduced in Generation 7. Now, looking at the base stats, you might be thinking, J-Rose, how is this much better than Nincada? It doesn't even have beneficial typing per se. Why are you so excited to use this Pokemon? I mean, on one hand, having water coverage is good since it's offensively good against rocks, but more importantly is its ability, Water Bubble. This ability is absolutely insane, and so it's not a surprise that only Dewpider and its evolved form Araquanid get it. Water Bubble both halves the damage taken by fire-type moves and doubles the damage by water-type moves, meaning Dewpider's not-so-great-looking stats look a heck of a lot better when it's using a water-type move. Also, not being able to be burned is kind of nice, but yeah, Water Bubble turns Dewpider into, interesting to, yes, this Pokemon has a spot on the team. Alright, now let's go battle the second gym leader, Nessa, the water-type gym leader. Nessa leads with Goldeen, thankfully not a Lightning Rod Goldeen, and Nessa only has 3 Pokemon. So we can Dynamax right away if we so choose to. We don't have to, but it's not a bad idea. I'm going to use Max Lightning. Unfortunately, Joltik doesn't have Thunderbolt yet. I could have gone back to the wild area and gotten it, and maybe if I lose, I'll do that. Dynamaxing doesn't change your speed. So we're still being outsped by the level 22 Goldeen, but we use Max Lightning. Like Max Overgrow, it changes terrain, this time to the electric terrain, which is going to boost my electric type attacks a little bit more. And then she sends out Arrokuda, a new Pokemon in Gen 8. It is fairly fast, especially when it uses Aqua Jet, but it gets knocked out fairly quickly. And now she's going to send out another Gen 8 introduction, Dreadnought, a rock water Pokemon. I am very worried about this thing, but because I have Absorb, even though it's just base 20, its max form is going to be base 90. I believe that is the lowest base power a max attack can have. So that's great. Dreadnought is going to Dynamax, giving it lots of HP. We really need Joltik to outspeed. Unfortunately, we don't, but Max Geyser, the water-type max attack, doesn't knock us out. Max Overgrow, however, only does about half, even though it's double super effective. And because it puts the grassy terrain out there, it's going to even restore the Dreadnaught's HP. This isn't great. I'm going to go for Electro Web, trying to lower its speed. It goes for Max Darkness, the dark-type max attack, and knocks out Joltik. Now I have to choose who to go into next, and I go into Sizzlipede. I am just trying to stall out the Dynamax at this point. It goes for Max Geyser and knocks me out. And now it's time for Dewpider to shine. The 3 turns are done. Dewpider has Bubble Beam. It goes for Razor Shell. Does quite a bit of damage, but Dewpider is fairly bulky. Bubble Beam with Rain. Not enough. Oh, the pain. And it knocks me out with Razor Shell. I don't have many options left. Grubbin. We do have Mud Slap, but that's not enough. Cutiefly. No, that's not going to do it. And Nincada goes down as well. Our first loss. I lost a couple more times, and I was going to get the TR for Energy Ball, which would have helped, but instead I level up Joltik a little bit. But you also might know it's gaining way more HP via Dynamax. I haven't talked about Max Raids, which are in the wild area and are another mechanic. But when you complete them, you get these Dynamax candies, which give you more HP when you Dynamax. And that's going to help immensely. And obviously being a couple levels higher is going to help as well. Once again, Dreadnought is going to knock out the Joltik. And this time Nincada. See, we are going to use it, but as cannon fodder. We also have to use Sizzlipede to get knocked out so that it will undynamax. And then it goes for Razor Shell. Dewpider is the same level, but this time Bubble Beam does knock out the Dreadnought. The rain was coming down, and we have our victory versus Nessa. There are many other things I could have done here to make things a little easier. I could have given Dewpider a better move, but this worked well enough. And so that is 2 gym badges with the Fire-type gym leader coming next. The next gym leader is Kabu, the Fire-type gym leader, and he leads off with Ninetales. So we're already getting the first Pokemon be fully evolved. However, I did go to the wild area and made some important changes you may notice. I've replaced Bubble Beam with Waterfall, a TR, by getting some watts and getting the TR. Obviously, you can see that Dewpider is our lead, and we're going to be going for Max Geyser. Ninetales goes for Quick Attack. It does like nothing. And Max Geyser makes the rain fall down, and that's going to help in more ways than one. Arcanine Intimidate kind of sucks, for sure. But with Water Bubble, with Max Geyser, Will-O-Wisp, it doesn't realize Water Bubble, I can't get burned. Keep that in mind that the AI didn't know how the ability worked. That may come in handy later. For now, Kabu's final Pokemon is coming out, Centiskorch, the evolved form of Sizzlipede, and it is going to Dynamax as well. Actually, it's going to Gigantamax, which is just a special form of Dynamax, and they get special moves. It goes for Max Flutterby. We've already seen that one, so no need to explain it. It lowers our special attack, and unfortunately, because of Intimidate, we're not able to knock out the Centiskorch, and so it will knock me out with Max Flutterby. But I have the perfect Pokemon waiting in the wings, my Sizzlipede. There is nothing this Centiskorch can really do to it, and shockingly, Sizzlipede can learn Scald. But interestingly enough, Kabu goes for the special Gigantamax move, G-Max Centferno, a Fire-type move, despite the fact I have Flash Fire. That's interesting too. It seems like the AI isn't aware of how abilities work. Maybe it's just the earlier gym leaders, but if we can take advantage of that, that would be pretty nice. But third gym leader, Fire-type gym leader, first try victory. I will say there was quite a bit of grinding in the wild area to get the TRs we needed, but I would say so far so good for our underleveled bugs. However, one thing that's fun about these first form challenges is there's a real difficulty spike at the end as there becomes more and more strong, fully evolved level Pokemon, and I'm stuck with Pokemon that have 300 base stats. Speaking of which, after beating Kabu, we head to Hammerlock, and this is the only other time you absolutely need to go in the wild area. I should also note that the game will literally not allow you to catch Pokemon above a certain level as a way to avoid you just catching super strong Pokemon and cheesing the rest of the game. But we can now catch a Skorupi, and although its evolved form Drapion is not a bug Pokemon, Skorupi is. It is bug poison introduced in Generation 4, making it the oldest Pokemon we have. And although it took a couple Pokeballs to do, we were in fact able to catch it. I'm not exactly sure who Skorupi is going to replace, but we'll see. Next, we're going to head to the fourth gym leader. In Shield, this would be a Ghost-type gym leader, which would be kind of bad. But in Sword, it's going to be, I believe it's pronounced B. Maybe it's Bea, like Taya Gardner. Who knows? But Bea sends out a Hitmontop while we're going to counter with Grubbin. Why Grubbin? What could Grubbin possibly do to a Hitmontop? Well, Grubbin learns Sticky Web, and since bug Pokemon are pretty slow, it's pretty good. Hitmontop goes for revenge, and even though I didn't attack, it still did an insane amount of damage. So yeah, Quick Attack is going to knock out the Grubbin. Speaking of first-time Pokemon, Skorupi, it is going to be added to the team, and it's going to be using Toxic Spikes. Because, at the very least, if I can stall, I do have bug Pokemon, and this is a fighting gym, maybe I can just wait out the Toxic. 2 layers of Toxic Spikes means as soon as a grounded Pokemon comes, they're going to instantly be badly poisoned. Unfortunately, setting up Toxic Spikes was all Skorupi could do, but it did a great job. Next, I'm going to send out Sizzlipede. The reason is Sizzlipede has Coil, and Hitmontop knows Counter, Revenge, Quick Attack. None of those are great moves, and if I can start getting Coils off, it might not do enough damage. In fact, I might be able to Dynamax and practically sweep through most of the team. Then we would just have to stall out the last Pokemon. It's working really, really well. Coil raises attack, defense, and accuracy. It's basically like physical type Quiver Dance, except speed's a little bit better than accuracy. Anyway, we go for Flame Wheel. It doesn't do great damage, and we're only at 16 HP, but that's more than enough to knock out the Hitmontop. I will say, though, the fact that Hitmontop's moves are all negative priority, meaning it always has to act last, was a big reason for that. Next comes out Pangoro. The Sticky Web is going to make a big difference here. There's no way our little Centipede outspeeds otherwise. I'm going to go for Flame Wheel. I do outspeed, but we only do just under half. And so Coil wasn't able to sweep through the whole team, but I do have a Pokemon that will absolutely obliterate Pangoro, and that's Cutiefly. Fairy is super effective against both fighting and dark, and Cutiefly has Dazzling Gleam as well as... Oh, no. Okay, Bullet Punch was not what I wanted to see. And Draining Kiss doesn't knock it out. No. Wait. It's poison. We're fine. Okay, so Cutiefly is the Pokemon I'm hoping to Dynamax and sweep through the team. Bug Fairy, that means fighting moves will be double weak. So Sirfetch'd comes out, the evolved form of Galarian Farfetch'd. It's actually not that fast anyway, but I'm gonna have to Dynamax here. And we're gonna use Max Starfall from Dazzling Gleam. That'll be 130 base power. The downside is that Max Starfall puts out Misty Terrain, and that means the final Pokemon will actually not get poisoned from Toxic Spikes. But I had to do this, and it didn't even knock out Sirfetch'd with a critical hit. That's not good. Maybe I made a bit of a big mistake there. Brutal Swing is a dark move, but you can see how much damage it did. Sirfetch'd, the poison knocks it out, but the final Pokemon will not get poisoned. It's Machamp, and I believe Machamp has Guts. So I guess it's a good thing that it can't get poisoned. It's going to Gigantamax, you can tell because it looks different. And yeah, that's a pretty scary Pokemon. Thankfully, it is slower due to the Sticky Web. That still works. Cutiefly uses Max Starfall. That does nothing. It goes for Max Strike, and that does enough. Okay, so my Cutiefly explodes and then faints. I think you've noticed that's what happens to Dynamax Pokemon that faints. All we have left is Dewpider and Joltik. I'm going to go for Joltik here, but we may need to regroup and try this again. Joltik, I did get the TR for Thunderbolt, which is kind of nice. It goes for Max Darkness and obliterates me. And that means we're going to send out Dewpider. But even though Dewpider has really good defense and Waterfall did a lot. In fact, if we survive, we actually might win, but we don't. So, unfortunately, the pure attacking power of Machamp just proved too much for me. But I have an idea that might work. So we're going to start the same way with Grubbin and then with Skorupi. But this time we're going to do something a little bit different. You see, there are some held items I've picked up in various parts of the game, and there's some really strong held items you can get very early in the game. And one of those is Leftovers. Now, Leftovers on a weak Sizzlipede may not make a huge difference, but once we start using coils, it actually should be restoring enough HP that we're going to have way more than we did before. We're also going to be using all of our coils, and I mentioned that maybe we could Dynamax and sweep. That's unlikely, but what we might be able to do is do enough damage that our remaining Pokemon could knock out the Machamp. We'll see. So we've Dynamaxed and we go for Max Flare. That is enough to knock out Hitmontop. Remember, Max Flare is stronger than a standard Flame Wheel. And now, the sun is out, making it even stronger. And is that going to be enough to knock out the Pangoro? It is. So, with 6 coils and Max Flare, and next comes out Sirfetch'd, we can knock it out. Now, there's good and bad here. The good is that we have Sizzlipede plus 3 other Pokemon now for Machamp, and Sizzlipede is going to get a pretty strong Flame Wheel out. The problem is, because there are 4 Pokemon, I'm not going to be Dynamaxed, and Machamp will be Gigantamaxed. For the record, only very specific Pokemon can Gigantamax. There's no Gigantamax Sizzlipede. What there is, however, is a Sizzlipede with plus 6 in defense, meaning we can now hit Machamp again with Flame Wheel, and in somewhat of a surprising twist, we didn't need to use a single additional Pokemon. The Centipede, made of fire and dreams, by coiling itself, was able to beat a massively macho Mon. That is 4 gym badges down with 2 first try victories, a 4th try victory, and a 2nd try victory. For pre-evolved bugs, this is absolutely unreal. At this point, I think we have a set team and some strategies we can use. And so let's see if those work versus Opal, the Fairy-type gym leader. We're going to lead the same way with Grubbin and with Sticky Web. Weezing, though, goes for Sludge. Grubbin survives. And then we get the gimmick of this gym battle. Opal will ask us questions. If we get it right, we get a stat boost. If we get it wrong, we lose stats. We got it wrong that time. The questions are always the same. The answers are always the same. I just didn't actually remember what the answer was to that one. But it doesn't matter. Normally I'd go Skorupi, but since Poison is strong against Fairy, I want to hold back for now. But I can't think of what else to go to, so reluctantly, I send out Skorupi. Now, unfortunately, Weezing is part Poison type. It's a Poison Fairy, at least this version of Weezing, Galarian Weezing. So if you wondered why they were using a Weezing and why Weezing looked funny, now you know. We send up the Toxic Spikes, and I remember her favorite color is purple, not pink, even though everything in this gym is pink. So that's pretty cool. But even though we gain in defense, it's just not really enough to do anything, and Weezing knocks me out. And then I go to Joltik, I go for Thunderbolt, but you can see here how these fully evolved Pokemon just don't really care. I mean, we get a massive boost to our special attack, which allows us to knock out Weezing, but then Togekiss comes out, and Togekiss, unlike previous Pokemon, is unaffected by the sticky web. It just flies right over it, and with Ancient Power, sweeps my bug team. This was a reason I thought of using Nincada, but I haven't leveled it up at all, and don't really have any good offensive moves. This was actually probably one of the biggest sticking points in the entire run, and this was a point where I was considering maybe trying to use the friendship mechanic to cheese Togekiss, or potentially even over leveling. However, before trying any of that, I decided to try some different strategies. And my new strategy was to lead with Joltik and Dynamax it right away. The good news is we could overwhelm the earlier Pokemon. The problem is we are going to have to figure out how to deal with Gigantamaxed Alcremie, Opal's final Pokemon. But that's a problem for future Gyros. Max Lightning does about half, but with the electric terrain, it's going to do a lot more. Now, I really don't want to get poisoned here. Of course I do. Now, Opal is always going to ask a question, and as long as I answer that her nickname is the Wizard, I'm going to gain speed. This is crucial, and why this Dynamax strategy works, specifically in this gym with these quiz questions, because only now, by getting her answer right, I outspeed Togekiss. Now, my hope is that with the electric terrain, with Max Lightning, and now that I outspeed, I one-shot Togekiss. I don't. But since I'm Dynamaxed, even though I was poisoned, I tank the Ancient Power. Unfortunately, my 3 turns of Dynamax have elapsed, but I still have that speed boost, and so I will knock out Togekiss with Thunderbolt. There are still 2 Pokemon to go, but that was the scariest Pokemon, at least so far. So that's nice. The next Pokemon we're gonna have to deal with is Mawile, but unfortunately, due to poison, this is Joltik's last turn. So the increases to defense and special defense are not going to be as helpful as they could have been. I really would have liked Joltik to faint earlier. At the very least, it paralyzes Mawile, but I don't think that made a huge difference. Now I could do a couple of things. I could try and knock out Mawile, or I could go to Skorupi. The reason I want to do that is that for Alcremie, it is a fairly bulky Pokemon, especially when Gigantamaxed. So the most important thing to do is to chip away at its HP via poison. Poison is just always good, especially toxic poison. Mawile, meanwhile, starts going for crunches. I do not have a great way of knocking it out. I can go for Dig. Dig is a TM, meaning it's infinite use, which is pretty good. Then we get asked the question how old she is. That will raise our attack, which is pretty good. And that will be enough to knock out Mawile. Probably not the Pokemon whose attack I wanted to raise. In fact, maybe I could have sacked Grubbin for Sticky Web. So hopefully we outspeed. Alcremie is toxic. It's going to Gigantamax. And the question is it going to knock me out with G-Max Finale? Well, what did you think? Of course it will. Like what? I had no HP. The one advantage of keeping Grubbin is I do have an extra Pokemon. So I'm going to save Sizzlipede because Fire resists Fairy. I'm going to go into Cutiefly, and I'm going to go for Struggle Bug. I do outspeed Alcremie, and Struggle Bug will lower its special attack. That means G-Max Finale, which restores HP, what a cheap move, is going to help. And because I don't want it restoring too much HP, I switch into Sizzlipede knowing it's going for G-Max Finale, and it doesn't do all that much, and now Alcremie is back to being regular old Alcremie. It goes for Draining Kiss, which is a better HP recovery move, only 50 base power, but it restores way more than Mega Drain or Absorb or something like that. Sizzlipede is not going to be able to knock it out, but it gets really close to the point where I want to give Sizzlipede the experience points. It has earned it, and so Dewpider, all it has to do is come in, tank an attack, and the Toxic, thanks to Skorupi, it's not going to gain experience points, but its Toxic Spikes led to this victory. Stall for the win. This one took a few resets, but not too long at all, and we just have 3 gyms remaining. That is it. Unfortunately, the next gym is a rock gym in Sword. In Shield, it would be Ice, which would be nice, but now we gotta deal with a rock-type gym leader, or at least we do in a second. There's one last pre-evolved bug Pokemon that could be useful, and that would be Dwebble. Dwebble was introduced in Generation 5 and is a bug rock Pokemon. Its stats seem like a more viable version of what we got with Nincada, although unfortunately, since rock doesn't resist rock, we don't get that weakness eliminated. We do, however, get the Sturdy ability, which might give Dwebble 1 extra attack, and maybe we could use that. It also can get Stealth Rock, which, as you've seen, entry hazards have been quite helpful for us. Will they be enough to take down Gordy, the rock-type gym leader who leads with a Barbaracle? Well, I'm gonna start with Grubbin, so you can see I'm going for our standard entry hazard strat. But Barbaracle is pretty fast, and it's pretty strong, and so Grubbin didn't have a chance. Joltik has gotten Energy Ball, which I talked about getting the TR for earlier, and that's great and all. However, Barbaracle outspeeds and goes for Rock Tomb and knocks it out, and we're going to need to rethink our strategy. We've done this before. I actually level up Joltik so it will outspeed Barbaracle, but Dynamaxing turn 1 and trying to deal with the final Pokemon with the rest of my team, it worked against Opal. And Max Overgrow will one-shot the Barbaracle. We just had to outspeed. Barbaracle, by the way, is rock water, so as you could probably tell. The reason this strategy seems like a bad idea is that the next Pokemon is Shuckle, and Shuckle seems like the perfect Pokemon to set up against, but I'm already Dynamaxed, and when you switch out, you lose the Dynamax, and you can only do it once per battle. Max Lightning does nothing, and I decide, okay, it's not worth it. Let's just send out Cutiefly. Now, I almost never get to use this before the post-game because you don't get Choice Scarf. We have the move Switcheroo, which changes held items, and you get it back after the battle. Choice Scarf, you can only use one move, but it'll increase your speed by 50%. I was hoping to lock Shuckle into something else, but I guess we'll lock it into Rock Tomb and set up all our entry hazards with first Grubbin and then Skorupi. The other thing I can do with Skorupi is Poison Fang has a chance to Toxic Poison, and that will knock out the Shuckle. I now don't want to lose any speed, so I actually go into Grubbin to finish off the Shuckle and to preserve my speed for my other Pokemon. So Stonjourner, the Stonehenge Pokemon, yeah, it looks really strange. It has really bad special defense, but really good defense. And that could be a bit of a problem for my Dewpider. Joltik, however, I am hoping that Energy Ball knocks it out. Will it? No, not quite. But, although I would have liked Joltik to survive, the poison will knock it out. And so now the final Pokemon comes out, and it's Colossal, a new Fire Rock Pokemon. I'm going to counter with Dewpider, and it's going to take it 10 years to Gigantamax, but when it's finally done, I go for Liquidation, and its defense is pretty good. Worse yet, it has the Steam Engine ability, and that's going to maximize its speed when hit by a Water-type attack. So it's going to outspeed all the rest of my Pokemon. G-Max Volcalith, it does enough to knock me out because it's a Rock-type move. Now we just kind of have to survive. because the Toxic is going to do our job for us. Man, if not for Steam Engine, we would definitely win this. Max Flare will knock out Skorupi. Next, I go into Cutiefly, and I try to be cute. I try to switch in Sizzlipede, hoping it will go for Max Flare, and that will give me one more turn. Unfortunately, G-Max Volcalith. However, thankfully, I misjudged how much HP it had, and like a volcano, Gigalith erupts, faints, and we have just 2 more gym badges to go. The second to last gym leader is Piers, not sure how to pronounce it. I'm going to call him Piers. But the problem with him is that his gym doesn't let you Dynamax, because it's not a traditional gym. So that's going to be a problem. We're going to lead with Grubbin and start setting up hazards, but we have been exploiting the fact that we can Dynamax whenever we want, and our opponent can only Dynamax their final Pokemon, which is pretty inefficient. So after setting up the Sticky Web, I'm actually going to go straight into Cutiefly. It goes for Sand Attack, which is definitely irritating, and I just go for Dazzling Gleam. No switcheroo this time. Even though it is quad effective here, it doesn't knock it out, but thankfully Dazzling Gleam doesn't miss, and we knock out the Scrafty. Next comes out Malamar. Malamar is actually pretty annoying because since Sticky Web lowers Malamar's speed and it has the contrary ability, it will raise Malamar's speed. I'm going to swap into Skorupi. This was actually a mistake because Malamar is part Psychic type, and that's going to do quite a bit of damage, which was stupid, but whatever. It goes for Foul Play, which uses my own attack power against me, and even though my attack power isn't as good as Malamar's, it's enough to knock me out. Next, I'm going to go for Joltik, and Malamar goes for Psycho Cut, but we're going to go for Leech Life. I got this all the way back earlier in the game. We haven't used it in a gym battle yet, but against the Dark-type gym leader, should have mentioned that, Psychic Dark's Malamar, it's pretty good. Next comes out Pierce's Ace, Obstagoon, and because Piers doesn't Dynamax, he doesn't have to send it out last, which surprised me. I was expecting it out last. It goes for Obstruct, which, if hit with a physical move, will lower my defense by 2 stages, which sucks. But what sucks even more is that Obstagoon is actually really bulky. So Leech Life does nothing, and it is easily able to knock me out with -2 in defense. Now I'm going to try to get a little cute. I go into Cutiefly, and I want to lock it into whatever move is going to come out next. So I go for Switcheroo, and it goes for Counter. At first, I went for Dazzling Gleam, and then I'm like, wait a minute, I have a much better strategy. What if I just go into Sizzlipede, and then go for 6 coils, and sweep? And that's exactly what I do. Almost. Skuntank is pretty bulky and actually survives an attack, but isn't able to do all that much because Coil also raises my defense. So we've kind of learned something from this battle. Even if we can't Dynamax, if we can lock a Pokemon into a useless move, as long as we still have Sizzlipede, we can then Coil 6 times and potentially sweep through any trainer. Now, the question is, how do we make sure we lock Pokemon into useless moves? Little bit easier said than done, it seems, but something we should keep in our back pocket. That brings us to the final gym leader, Raihan. Now, Raihan is interesting. He also has a gimmick to his gym, Double Battles. He does double battles, which makes things a little interesting. He leads with Flygon and Gigalith, and I decide to counter with Grubbin and Dewpider. Sticky Web won't nearly be as effective in this battle. However, I decide to go for it to try and get his ace Pokemon Duraludon to get a little slower, and I will Dynamax immediately my Dewpider to try to get as much power as I can out of this Max Geyser. Unfortunately, I didn't realize Flygon had Thunder Punch, and so Dynamaxing helped out with that too. And probably because I Dynamaxed, and thankfully it is a Sandstream Gigalith, not a sturdy Gigalith, we're able to knock it out, which is pretty good. The next Pokemon coming out is Sandaconda. Sandaconda has a pretty annoying ability where when hit, it will just spit out a Sandstorm. So that's a little annoying. I make a bit of a mistake here. I should have X-Scissored the Flygon, and then Max Geyser would have clearly knocked out Sandaconda. I was overly cautious, but in the end, Sandaconda does faint, and then Sandspit will spit out a Sandstorm, My Dewpider has one more turn, but unfortunately, Flygon is going to knock it out. Duraludon does have less speed, which is kind of nice. I mean, it looks pretty darn cool. It's just like a city dragon, Dragon Steel. And if you couldn't tell, Raihan is the dragon gym leader, although he doesn't really necessarily stick purely to that typing. Dewpider gets knocked out by Flygon, and then Grubbin by Duraludon, and now I need 2 new Pokemon. So I'm going to go with Dwebble, who has the Eviolite, and then Cutiefly, which has the choice specs. You can get all 3 choice items before the postgame. Dude, that's insane. So first things first, let's get rid of Flygon and turn this into a 2-on-1. Flygon goes for Breaking Swipe, which does lower my attack, which is annoying, but Choice Specs Dazzling Gleam does decent damage to both Pokemon, and luckily, they focus their attacks on Dwebble and not Cutiefly, which works for me. Cutiefly has a pretty good attack for dragons. I don't think Flygon can OHKO my Joltik, so I'm going to go out for a little bit of extra speed, but just in case, I'm going to go for Sucker Punch, just because I'm a little cautious and it does like nothing. Flygon actually uses Steel Wing on Cutiefly and misses. That's pretty darn clutch. Duraludon goes for Max Rock Ball, which hits Joltik. Had I gone for Leech Life, we would have actually knocked out Flygon, so that may have actually cost me the battle. And now we have to go for Sizzlipede. I know that Duraludon is going to go for Max Rock Ball against Sizzlipede. Oh wait, no, it won't. 3 turns are up. Man, it's hard to keep track with double battles, but this could be what I needed to win. I'm going to go for Scald, trying to burn the Duraludon, and Flygon goes for Breaking Swipe. For the record, it does hit 2 Pokemon, but my Cutiefly is immune since it's a dragon move. So I go for Dazzling Gleam. Flygon finally gets knocked out, and although I only have 2 Pokemon myself, I have done what I wanted. Turn this into a 2v1. I go for Scald. It does decent damage. Duraludon goes for Stone Edge. That's going to knock out Sizzlipede, but I already know we've won the battle. Because although Dazzling Gleam didn't seem like it was doing that much, now that there's only 1 Pokemon on the field, Dazzling Gleam will do 25% more. Moves that hit multiple Pokemon have their damage reduced by 25%. We know we outspeed, and so Cutiefly is able to take down the Dragon Gym Leader, and all that's left is, well, there's no Elite Four in this game. It's kind of this weird tournament thing. In the end, you still battle 4 trainers and then the champion, but the way it's done is different. I don't know. It's weird. It's fine because I haven't yet talked about Marnie or Hop, the villain rival, I guess. Not that they're very villainous. And the friendly rival. So let's start with Marnie. Marnie is Piers' sister, so she also has a bit of a preference for dark Pokemon, but not exclusively. So here was my thoughts for the first battle. We're going to lead with Grubbin. Standard Sticky Web lead. It goes for Torment. I can't use a move twice in a row. Little annoying, not the end of the world. I use Sticky Web. It goes for Snarl. 5% chance to miss. It missed. Not a big deal if it would have hit. X-Scissor doesn't knock it out. That's annoying. Because of the Torment, I have to go for Spark. It doesn't knock it out, but that's okay. Snarl hits, and we knock out the Liepard. Next comes out the Scrafty, and because of Sticky Web, Scrafty is now extremely slow. I swap out and go into Cutiefly, and even after a Scary Face, I outspeed, but even the quad super effective Dazzling Gleam with the choice specs, not enough to one-shot the Scrafty, so I'm going to swap into Grubbin, and the Scrafty goes for Scary Face. Grubbin's not as fast as Cutiefly, so it gets crunched. Next comes out the Dwebble. I was hoping that Dwebble would be able to outspeed, and it does. I go for X-Scissor. Good stuff. Next comes out Toxicroak. So like I said, not exclusively dark type. So with Toxicroak, it gets its speed lowered, and I have Bulldoze. I actually outspeed, and Bulldoze lowers speed as well. The Toxicroak goes for Swagger, which is great because there's only a 1 in 3 chance that I hit myself in Confusion. I get the 66% chance that I don't, and Bulldoze knocks out the Toxicroak, and that leads to Morpeko, a dark electric type. Now, even though Morpeko is frequently associated with Marnie, it's not her ace. And unfortunately for me, it goes for Spark and paralyzes. That's a little annoying. because the ace is about to come out, and the ace Pokemon, I don't need to teach Rock Wrecker, is Grimmsnarl, a fairy dark Pokemon. So my bug moves will only be single effective. Marnie will Gigantamax her Grimmsnarl into, well, Grimmsnarl Gigantamax form, I guess. She goes for Gmax Snooze, which doesn't knock me out. I snap out of confusion. I went for Rock Slide just to see how much it would do. I was just more curious than anything. I should have gone for X-Scissor. Goes for Max Starfall. We've already seen that move. Just is going to turn everything into the Misty terrain. And Dwebble's done a pretty good job. Cutiefly is super effective, and Grimmsnarl did lose speed. So we'll see how much a Dazzling Gleam does. Unfortunately, Misty terrain does not power up my fairy moves. I can still Dynamax myself. Haven't done that yet. I go for Max Starfall, and it does less than I would have hoped. It goes for Max Starfall and destroys Cutiefly. Well, that's annoying. That said, the Gigantamax turns are done. I send out Sizzlipede. Sizzlipede has Fire Lash, which is way better than Flame Wheel, stronger and lowers defense. Great move. And we didn't even need to lower the defense because Grimmsnarl is done. Battle over. Now on to like the 80th battle with Hop. I mean, I don't talk about it just because the Hop battles weren't too difficult. Although the last one I kind of struggled with a bit. You just battle him so much. Holy mackerel. Alrighty. So Hop leads with his Double. Double has really good physical defense, and because of that, I alter my strategy and lead with Skorupi. Now, I have the Eviolite equipped, great item to get, and thus Skorupi can easily tank the Zen Headbutt, and I was just trying to poison Double because it's just so irritating to deal with, and I'm able to do that and then set up the Toxic Spikes. Now, I really want to get this math right because I really would prefer Double not to get the full restore, and I think, no, I just messed up. Just a little too little HP. Now I have to use Poison Fang again, assuming Zen Headbutt doesn't flinch me or knock me out, which it did. Alright, well, that's not what I wanted. I'm gonna go into Cutiefly and try to be, well, cute here. I'm hoping it goes for Cotton Guard or something, and I'm gonna switcheroo. No, it goes for Body Slam. Well, I do have Dwebble. This is why I don't have Grubbin. I'm using both Skorupi and Dwebble, so it's a bit of a rotation between those three, it seems. Dwebble will resist Body Slam. Unfortunately, there's only one Eviolite. That would be pretty useful. I'm going to just try and knock out the Double, and then I'm going to go for Stealth Rock. And when it's all said and done, I'm actually able to knock out Double with Dwebble, which is pretty good. So we don't have Sticky Web, but we do have both Stealth Rock and Toxic Spikes. But here's the reason why Hop was so difficult for me. Corviknight is just really good. It's a flying type. There wasn't a flying gym, and it has Steel Wing for Dwebble. Against Joltik, it's just bulky. So I could Dynamax, and I think I have to, try and get rid of this thing as soon as possible. I go for Max Lightning, and it doesn't quite knock out the Corviknight, which is frustrating, but it goes for Scary Face, which is not the best, but not the worst. Then it goes for Swagger, which I avoid, which is fine, but that seems like a bit of a waste of my Dynamax. We're only gonna maybe knock out 2 Pokemon with it, and Hop still has quite a few left. One of them is Snorlax, and Snorlax is basically double, but specially defensive, which is really, really annoying. I'm gonna go for the Max Lightning anyway, just because the electric terrain is out, and it does decent enough damage. Snorlax goes for High Horsepower, which actually did less than I thought. Joltik still has the leftovers equipped, and at this point, it's probably smarter to either swap or to go for Leech Life. I decide to swap into Dewpider, hoping Snorlax would go for High Horsepower, and it actually misses, only 5% chance of that. Getting pretty lucky. Then with Dewpider, I go for Liquidation, and Snorlax had been damaged enough that we knock it out. That's really good. But the next Pokemon is also pretty defensively bulky, Pincurchin. Pincurchin, I just go for Liquidation, and maybe it's not that defensively bulky. You know what? Maybe I'm wrong about this thing. I don't play enough modern Pokemon, clearly. But let's go for Liquidation. Let's knock it out. The final Pokemon is Rillaboom. And if you're wondering why it's not the Fire type, well, actually, that would be even easier for Dewpider. But the truth is, I wasn't intending on doing a solo bug challenge when I started this playthrough. I actually was going to be doing a completely different thing, and then chat talked me into it. So blame them for the fact I actually have Scorbunny. But yeah, Rillaboom isn't bad, and it Dynamaxes, but we have Lunge, and Lunge is pretty good as long as we get to use it, and wow, we definitely get to use it. Max Darkness and Rillaboom's attacks are all physical. I should mention that a Dynamax attack is physical or special based on the move that it originally was. So a Dazzling Gleam Max Starfall would be a special move. A Max Starfall that was coming from a Play Rough would be physical. Pretty simple. So the fact it is lowering my special defense means nothing. And Lunge is lowering its attack. And you know what? Dewpider deserves this, so I go into Cutiefly. Unfortunately, Cutiefly is so not bulky that it actually faints. But we're going to go into Sizzlipede. And I was actually wrong. I was wrong. Rillaboom has Uproar. I thought it was all physical moves. Didn't end up mattering. Sizzlipede knocks it out. And we have, in theory, just 3 trainers to go. In practice, we have a couple more we have to talk about, but yeah, I'll get to that. Now, if you care about the lore, that was like the tournament to get into the Gym Leader tournament. So now we're in the Gym Leader tournament. I should mention there are some battles I've skipped, like the rival battles and the Olena battles. There's a lot of battles, and I don't want this video to be like 2 hours long, and I did win, obviously. Before you can enter the tournament, Bede challenges you to a battle, and Bede only has 4 Pokemon, yet I actually struggled with him. And since this video is getting kind of long and Bede is definitely not the toughest trainer, let me explain to you how I was finally able to get past him. What makes Bede so difficult is that although Fairy isn't super effective against Bug, Bug is resisted by Fairy, Mawile double resists it, and the entry hazard strat wasn't working. I still do want to use Sticky Web, but the easiest way to use Sticky Web is to make sure I know what Mawile is going to do. So I'm going to switcheroo a Choice Specs onto Mawile. That will boost its special attack, which doesn't do anything for it, locks it in to the Iron Head. Grubbin is at a high enough level, it is able to tank it as long as it doesn't flinch and use Sticky Web. That's still huge because I am still very slow. Now we have Sizzlipede with leftovers. This is important because we're going to be hit by these Iron Heads. However, once I use a single coil, Iron Head is resisted and the leftovers restores enough HP that I can use 6 of them. Now, you're going to immediately notice a problem. I can't Dynamax and just go for Max Flare because there's 4 Pokemon. However, I don't need to because it's a Mawile. I can just go for Fire Lash and it should one-shot easily. Gardevoir, thankfully, it's not a Trace Gardevoir. That would be really annoying because then it would have Flash Fire. I do Dynamax and go for the Max Bug move because I wanted to know if that would work. It did. So, no problem. Next comes out Galarian Rapidash, which is Psychic Fairy. In fact, the last 3 Pokemon are all Psychic Fairies, including Hatterene. So, Hatterene comes out, it Dynamaxes, and we obliterate it. For the record, Hatterene actually has really good defensive stats, but 6 coils with Dynamax, Max Move, did enough. Now, Bede is the last trainer, major trainer, that only has 4 Pokemon. The rest are going to have 5 or 6. That's obviously going to complicate things with the Dynamax math, but it worked out for Bede. At least once I figured out, I just have to use Coil a lot more aggressively than I was earlier in the game. Now that we've beaten Bede, we can actually get to the Gym Leader tournament, and our first trainer is always going to be Nessa. Nessa is, of course, the Water-type Gym Leader, and I'm just gonna go for Rock Tomb here, hoping to try and cheese an emergency exit. Doesn't happen, but since I have Sturdy, I can go for it again. Instead, I'm just gonna go for Stealth Rock, do a little damage to the remaining Pokemon, and just faint. Next, Grubbin's gonna come out. Now, I'm hoping Grubbin outspeeds the Golisopod, and it does. I use Sticky Web, Shadow Claw's good, and then I go for Spark. It does enough to trigger Emergency Exit and Paralyze. Emergency Exit, the Golisopod has to switch out at 50% HP, and then out comes Pelipper. Pelipper will be damaged 25% by the Stealth Rocks. It's able to knock me out, which is fine, and now I go into Joltik. Now, unfortunately, since Pelipper can fly, it is immune to the Sticky Web, but I think I might just outspeed it. I do. And since it is both a water and flying, and we crit, we destroy it. Next comes out Seaking, and I wasn't sure what I wanted to do here. I don't want to Dynamax just yet, so I swap into Dewpider. I'm not exactly sure what Seaking is going to do. It goes for Aqua Ring. basically a move equivalent of leftovers. Now, I go for lunge. It actually outspeeds. I believe it has swift swim. It goes for Mega Horn and crits, which is very frustrating. Now, without the crit and with the attack drop, we may, and I mean may, be able to survive an attack, but I'm not certain. We outspeed without Swift Swim, which is nice. And now I think we definitely survive. Yep, on exactly 6 HP. And now I'm really hoping Lunge will knock it out. That would be sick. It does. Go Dewpider. Let's go. So now coming out is Golisopod. And we're just going to go for Lunge. Unfortunately, Nessa does have a full restore, and she is going to use it here. But here's the good news. We can just go into Joltik, and if we do about 50% damage, even if we don't knock out the Golisopod, once it swaps back in, okay, well, we knocked it out. I was thinking it would come back, emergency exit, Stealth Rocks, but didn't have to happen. So now Barraskewda comes out. It is fairly fast, so I don't know if I outspeed, but it's time to Dynamax. The Barraskewda does, in fact, outspeed. It goes for Liquidation. The Dynamax definitely helped, and I went for Max Overgrowth. We do knock out the Barraskewda, and we're going to gain a little bit of HP back due to the grassy terrain. But more importantly, our grass moves are going to become powered up because of the grassy terrain. And so we're going to get a Gigantamax. Not Dynamax, Gigantamax Dreadnought. It is double weak, 2 Max Overgrowth. There is grassy terrain, and that is it. No need to explain. We win. Hooray. Pretty good. So the final trainer in this tournament is Bee or Alistair, depending on which version you play. Obviously, Bee being a fighting type gym leader makes her a little bit easier for me, but remember, her Machamp is still pretty good. So no guarantees here. Now, this is one of the last battles in the game, so I'm not really trying to win per se. I'm just trying to figure out what her Pokemon like to do and how I can best counter that. So because of that, I led with Grubbin. Made sense to me. Hawlucha goes for Bounce, which means I have more than enough time to use Sticky Web, and in fact, Bounce misses. Now, Grubbin evolves into an electric type, so it does get Spark. And I haven't really used it much. I've used it once because I had to. But I'm able to do a little bit of damage to Hawlucha. Bounce knocks me out. And I'm able to go for Joltik. You might be able to see it's quickly going by that I have the leftovers equipped. I don't know what to do. I'm just trying to figure things out here. I could have put Choice Specs. It goes for Bounce. I think if I could use Thunder, which Joltik can't learn in this generation, that would be kind of nice. But I go for Thunderbolt, which misses. Then Bounce hits. I survive because I'm part electric type. Maybe I should add Eviolite. I don't know. We knock out Hawlucha. Yay. Next comes out Phalanx. Phalanx is a pure fighting type Pokemon with a pretty cool move in No Retreat. I'm going to try to do as much damage as possible with Thunderbolt before it can use No Retreat. Goes for Rock Tomb. Not bad. Knocks me out. Now I'm going to go for Cutiefly. Cutiefly has the choice specs. We have Dazzling Gleam. Is it enough to knock out the Phalanx? Let's see. It is! Hooray! That's really good. Next comes out Grapploct, another pure fighting type Pokemon introduced in this generation. And I decide, since there's 3 Pokemon left, this is a good time to Dynamax. I go for the Max Starfall. Not enough to knock out the Grapploct. And it goes for Octolock, which basically just doesn't let me escape. It also lowers my defense, so it's slightly better than Spiderweb. Grapploct is knocked out, and then comes out Sirfetch'd. We've already battled one of these things before. We don't knock it out in one turn. Slam would have knocked me out had I not Dynamaxed. I thought of maybe going for Draining Kiss, forgetting that I had choice specs, and I even misclicked. I would have gone for Bug Buzz, and it would have been one of those classic J-Rose misclicks. But yay, choice specs saves me from a mistake, and I knock out Sirfetch'd. And now all that's left is the final Pokemon, Machamp. Now we know it's Gigantamaxing, and so what I'm going to do is try to save Cutiefly with its great speed and its powerful Dazzling Gleam for the end, kind of as like a revenge KO'er. The other thing I was thinking is that Machamp does have a fire move, so if I switch into Sizzlipede, that is one less Gigantamax turn. Pretty slick. So now I just can go for either Lunge or Fire Lash. I go for Lunge. Let's lower its attack a little bit. It goes for Max Strike, lowering my speed. It's not doing all that much though. It might take 3 to knock me out. So I go for Fire Lash. Unfortunately, well, fortunately I outspeed. Unfortunately, it does knock me out in 2 turns. But at this point, Machamp isn't giant anymore. I'm actually going to go for Switcheroo here. See what it does. And it goes for Fire Punch. Truth is, had I not gone for Sizzlipede before, we would for sure win. But remember, Water Bubble halves the damage of Fire-type moves, so Dewpider can easily come in. And oh yeah, remember how we lowered defense? Didn't need to Switcheroo. That was a little bit of overkill there. We knock it out. You can see Dewpider is level 57. In standard battles, it has been definitely one of my go-tos, but Bea or Bea or whatever her name is, she has been defeated. And now we only have one more trainer left in the Gym Leader tournament, the 8th Gym Leader. This time we have to fight him in a single battle, Raihan. Surely this will be a match for the ages, one that will be written down in history books. The upcomer G-Lily 9 against Raihan. It didn't work out that way. This battle was a joke. He leads with Torkoal, which is a bit of a problem because the AI is kind of like Gen 1 AI, except it knows not to use status moves, but it really, really likes super effective moves. Like, really likes it. So Grubbin can stick out a Sticky Web, and then all I have to do is give Cutiefly either Choice Specs or Choice Scarf. It really didn't matter. And yeah, time to coil. Time to use 6 coils and probably sweep through the entire team. TBH. I go for Fire Lash after 6 coils. Not enough to knock out Torkoal. Torkoal, usually you think about it having White Smoke, but this one had Drought. I haven't really used Scald since the 3rd gym, so might as well use it now. Knock out Torkoal. Next comes out Goodra. Now, unfortunately, Goodra is fairly bulky, so I don't want to take any chances. I'm going to Dynamax here and go for Max Flutterby. Goodra is more of a special defensive wall, so we knock it out. Next comes out Turtonator. This is a Fire Dragon, so we have to go for Max Flutterby, and it doesn't knock out the Turtonator, but it goes for Sunny Day. Raihan really likes using Weather, and that works out pretty well for me because even though he heals Turtonator, we're able to put it within range of another lunge knocking it out. Now out comes Flygon, which is a physical attacker. Now Flygon has Levitate, so it's immune to the Sticky Web, but again, Raihan loves Weather for some reason, so we're able to not outspeed, but one-shot before it hit us with anything. And now we've already seen the final Pokemon is Duraludon. Unfortunately, nothing we have isn't resisted by it. Double negative there. I go for Lunge, and yeah, you can see, even with +6, it's a very bulky Pokemon. However, you can also see that with +6, a Rock-type move barely did much to me. And after I go for Lunge again, it's going to do even less. And so I don't know if Sizzlipede is going to be able to knock it out, but certainly Sizzlipede... Oh, it is. It is. I was going to say put it in perfect position to be mopped up by anything else, but Sizzlipede coiling and lashing out was enough to defeat Raihan. And all that is left now is the final champion of all of Galar, Leon. Now, if you thought Raihan was a letdown, I have really good news for you. Leon is not a pushover by any means. He leads with an Aegislash or Aegislash, no idea. And of course, I go for my classic Sticky Web, trying to get the hazards, trying to switcheroo a move, and this is when it all went downhill. I switcherooed Shadow Ball. Aegislash is really strong. But hold up, that's not the only tool Leon has in his arsenal. In my next battle, I'm able to knock out the Aegislash, and then comes out Dragapult. Dragapult, although it isn't a levitator, is extremely fast and hits extremely hard. Now, I should mention there is a giant break of gameplay between when you beat Raihan and Leon. So once you lose to Leon, you can just rebattle him. It's kind of like Red in Heart Gold, Soul Silver or Steven, which is another reason Sword and Shield are a lot easier. The fact you can just rebattle the champion and level up if you need to, which for the record, Grubbin was like level 49. So leveling it up a little bit made sense. Now you'll notice my Grubbin has a completely different moveset. I have really tried to specialize everything for Leon because he is the final battle. So I have Thunder Wave, Sticky Web, and Light Screen, as well as Focus Sashes. Now you don't get a Focus Sash back when it's been used up, but as this is the final battle, who cares? And even due to a paralysis, I got in a hit against Aegislash. So now out comes Sizzlipede, and unfortunately, I have to kind of guess whether it's going to go for King Shield. If it does and I'm wrong, I lose 2 stages of attack, which is what happened here. If I was right, I would have knocked out the Aegislash. So I'm just going to fast forward to the exact same moment in the next battle. This time, I decide to go for Coil, anticipating that, well, it was going to go for King Shield. It just didn't. Which means I actually get to get off a second wave. No, that's not King Shield because I went first. And now is it going to go for King Shield? It's going to go for King Shield. I hate this game. It's so lame. Anyway, all right. So even with our attack being lowered, we're going to knock out the Aegislash, which sucks. I also just noticed that my attack was only lowered by 1 stage. This is because I was thinking about Gen 6 and 7. In Gen 8, it actually is only 1 stage. They nerfed King Shield, which is interesting. Now, Leon has Inteleon, because don't forget, I took Scorbunny, which is not great for a Sizzlipede. So I decide to switch into Dewpider, because it's water type, right? Water Bubble protects me against fire attacks, not water attacks, and it did quite a lot, to be quite honest with you. And it's not as if I have great moves for water Pokemon. And yeah, although I'm able to survive on 1 HP, I don't actually do much of anything to Inteleon at all. So now I have to Dynamax my Joltik earlier than I want. It goes for Tearful Look, which lowers my attack and special attack, which is extremely annoying. I can knock out the Inteleon, but because it's going to heal, after I do that, I'm done with Dynamax. So that's not great. And oh boy, out comes Dragapult, and it's able to just obliterate me. I have now been battling Leon for, well, including some prep time, over an hour and a half. And you can see I've radically adjusted my strategy. I am now leading with Dewpider that has learned Mirror Coat. One nice thing about Generation 8 is that there is a mover learner in every Pokemon Center that will teach you any move you've learned via TM or TR or via level up. So even if I didn't use a move like Mirror Coat before, now it can knock out Aegislash, and that's +1 for me, although I'm at 6 HP. Next comes out Dragapult, which is the big problem. But I have a little bit of an idea here. I did have to raise Cutiefly's level a little bit so that it would outspeed, even with a Choice Scarf. But Dragapult has Flamethrower. And so perhaps thinking about it as the problem Pokemon was wrong. Maybe it's the solution. Because now I have locked it into Flamethrower. Leon and none of the AI opponents will ever switch out. All it's going to do is just use Flamethrower again and again and again times 6 until I'm ready to use Max Flare. The question is that enough to knock out the Dragapult? The answer is yes, although I probably should have Dynamaxed after, since there was really no harm. But the one benefit of Dynamaxing before, actually, is that Inteleon, which does outspeed, its Snipe Shot doesn't knock me out. So perhaps I actually made the right call, unintentionally. Let's go. So we've knocked out Inteleon. And now we have Haxorus. Haxorus is going to outspeed me. I didn't get the Sticky Web out. It goes for Outrage. And don't forget, we're +6 in defense. We knock out Haxorus. And now out comes Mr. Rhyme. If I had Sticky Web, I would definitely outspeed this thing. Unfortunately, it outspeeds me. So I have Grubbin here. I can just go for Sticky Web. Unfortunately, I have a moveset built to defeat Aegislash. So it's not quite the moveset I would want. I'd prefer X-Scissor here. But I can paralyze the Mr. Rhyme, and I can lay down a Light Screen. If you wonder why no Sticky Web, well, you'll see in a second if you don't already know. At this point, I know I've lost because Joltik isn't built for Mr. Rhyme. It's built for the next Pokemon. And while I'm able to knock it out, the final Pokemon, Charizard, well, what am I really going to do here? You see, I have Dwebble. And Dwebble has Sturdy, and it has a rock move. So the idea was, and look at that, after Sandstorm, if I were able at some point to set up Stealth Rock, I would have won there and then, but when would be a safe time to do so for Dwebble? We have the beginning of a strat, but we have a couple issues I need to work through. The first issue was that Sizzlipede shouldn't faint to Mr. Rhyme, and the easy way to do that is by having Grubbin. It won't outspeed, but it doesn't have to. With Focus Sash, I guarantee the use of Sticky Web, and so now I'll outspeed Mr. Rhyme. Then with Dupiter, I can do the exact same thing as before, and now you already know what's going to happen. It's the exact same as last time, so we can just kind of speed through really quick, and we learned that Max Flare is important. I have maxed out the Dynamax on Sizzlipede, so we have 300 HP, which is really good. And now I'm actually going to go for Max Overgrow against Inteleon. Sizzlipede can learn Power Whip, which is insanely good, but the reason I want to use it is just for a little bit more recovery. So next comes out Haxorus. It is going to outspeed us with or without Sticky Web, and I knew that. I was aware Haxorus was going to outspeed. I actually looked up the IVs, the exact stats. I had started to map out exactly what I needed in order to win, at least in terms of whether I outspeed or not. So Mr. Rhyme, I knew I did outspeed, and now we knock it out. So now, look at how many Pokemon we have for Charizard. We also waste a Gigantamax turn by making it knock out Sizzlipede. Now I have 2 Pokemon left. Joltik no longer has Choice Specs. It has a Focus Sash, and Dwebble has the Eviolite. The hope is that a Thunderbolt from Joltik plus a Rock Slide from Dwebble will lead me to victory. Thunderbolt does not enough. I know it needed to do more, because now it's going to faint to Sandstorm. Not that that mattered. And you know what's going to happen to Dwebble. It's going to survive on Focus Sash. Eviolite was useless here. But you know what the good news is, guys? We have it. We won. One tiny little change. Actually, we could have changed a couple other things. We could level up Dwebble, sure. But either changing its item or its move means we win. What you're about to see is me beating the entire game, not exploiting the friendship mechanic, not using items, not even over leveling. In fact, I'm under leveled, and yet I'm pretty confident I'm going to be able to beat Leon's entire team. Everything is going to go exactly as it went in the last battle, unless we get any unlucky crits against us, in which case that would be really bad and we'd have to do it again. But we don't, and we're back at Charizard. It's going to Gigantamax, knock out the Sizzlipede, into Joltik, go for Thunderbolts, does less than it did last time, but that's okay, because although I should have equipped the Hardstone or even gotten the Choice Band, instead, I used Rock-type Hyper Beam, Rock Wrecker, and while I was worried it wouldn't, it did just enough to knock out Gigantamax Charizard, and that is Pokemon Sword and Shield with not over-leveled, pre-evolved bug Pokemon, no friendship, no items, no problems. I really don't think there's another game in the series where this is possible. Maybe Scarlet and Violet, but I don't think so. The combination of easily accessible TRs with really powerful moves early and late, battle items typically locked away in the post-game, and most importantly, the Dynamax mechanic all made this possible. But that's all for me. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you all in the next video. Take care.